The Hidden History of Opium in Malaya, Colonial Greed and Its Consequences. Picture this. It's the early 19th century in Malaya. The air is filled with the scent of tropical rainforests and spices, the land rich with tin and rubber. But beneath this prosperity lies a darker reality, a story of addiction, control, and colonial greed. Today, we're diving into a controversial chapter of history, the introduction of opium in Malaya by the British, its consequences, and how it shaped the lives of our ancestors. Let's uncover the hidden truths. The story begins in the late 18th and early 19th centuries, during the height of the British Empire's control in Southeast Asia. The British, driven by their desire to control trade and maximize profits, found opium to be a lucrative commodity. They imported opium from India to Malaya, capitalizing on the growing Chinese migrant population, many of whom had come to work in tin mines and plantations. Opium was not introduced as an accidental indulgence, but as a deliberate tool of economic manipulation. The British established government-controlled opium monopolies, ensuring that profits flowed directly into colonial coffers. This wasn't just a trade, but a strategy to maintain control over the local economy and, indirectly, the workforce. For the British, the revenue from opium sales funded administrative costs and colonial infrastructure. For the local population, however, opium quickly became a trap, ensnaring many in cycles of addiction and poverty. What started as a seemingly harmless substance soon became a public health and societal crisis. Let's talk about the impact. For many Chinese laborers, life in the tin mines and plantations was grueling. Opium was initially consumed as an escape, a way to dull the physical pain and mental exhaustion of daily life. But the addiction soon spread like wildfire, affecting not just laborers but also local traders and communities. Addiction drained productivity and often led to financial ruin. Families were torn apart as breadwinners spent their earnings on opium instead of providing for their loved ones. Entire communities were affected, with opium dens becoming common sights in towns and villages. The British, of course, turned a blind eye to these consequences. They focused solely on the financial benefits, ignoring the long-term societal harm. The opium trade became a double-edged sword. It enriched the colonial administration while impoverishing the local populace. By the late 19th and early 20th centuries, the tide began to turn. Anti-opium movements gained momentum, led by local leaders, religious groups, and international organizations. These groups highlighted the devastating effects of opium addiction and lobbied for reform. One of the key turning points came with the establishment of the Opium Commission in the early 1900s, which documented the widespread damage caused by the substance. Slowly but surely, restrictions were introduced, and by the mid-20th century, the opium trade in Malaya had been curtailed. However, the damage had already been done. The scars of addiction lingered for decades, affecting generations of families. While the British eventually phased out the trade, it's hard to ignore how they used opium as a tool to exploit and control the local population for over a century. So, why does this history matter? The introduction of opium in Malaya by the British is a powerful reminder of how colonial powers often prioritized profits over people. It's a story of how greed can devastate societies and how systemic issues like addiction are usually tied to larger political and economic forces. Today, as we grapple with modern challenges like drug addiction and economic inequality, it's worth reflecting on these historical lessons. How can we ensure that history doesn't repeat itself? How can we build societies that prioritize human well-being over profit? Understanding this chapter of our past helps us appreciate the resilience of our forefathers. Despite the hardships they endured, they laid the foundation for the diverse and vibrant nation we call home today. History isn't just about the past, it's about the lessons we carry forward. If today's episode resonated with you, share it with someone who loves exploring the hidden corners of history. Let's keep the conversation alive. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and always question the stories behind the headlines. See you soon.